Here we go. Episode 1. Welcome to All Hitches podcast, Northern Virginia football podcast. We got Coach Dash here.
And I am Coach Mesa. We're excited to be doing this.
It's gonna be fun. Kind of getting the cobwebs off here in episode 1, talking about kind of why we started the podcast and introducing ourselves and all that good stuff. Dan, I'll let you go ahead and kind of start with the introductions here.
Sure. My name's Dan Mesa. I've been coaching high school football now for over 20 years. Football has always been a passion of mine. High school sports in general. I haven't just coached football. I've coached high school softball. I've been a middle school track and field coach. I've been a middle school basketball coach. I'm really passionate about sports. I'm really passionate about making sure that we give schools out there the cover that they deserve. All right, that's a little about myself.
Yeah, that's awesome. Ramin Dash, and kind of the same thing. Been coaching in this area for a little bit. Started at youth league with my kids. Kind of worked my way up with them. I've been at Woodson High School coaching for quite a few years now, and taking a step back a little bit this year. And you and I are kind of talking about stuff, and it's kind of how it got going. Right, we were just like, both taking a year off sort of coaching this year, and we were talking about where are we going to find information on some of these teams? And there's not a whole lot of stuff out there.
No, there's not. I mean, just what we're finding right now is just trying to dig up stuff, trying to get coaches' contacts, which you think would be in the internet age would be really easy. You and I have been talking about doing this for a while, and getting a little more background myself. I've coached in 3 different states. So this is my 3rd state I've coached in. I've coached in California and New Mexico. And when I got here in 2020, I was speaking to our head coach at the time, Jared Van Acker, and I was like, well, when's the local news guy coming to do the cover story on, each school, did the high school preview? And he kind of looked at me and was like, that just doesn't happen out here. And so, one of the big reasons, we want to do this is because there seems to be a lot of people who are really passionate about high school sports, and there's zero coverage. If just, again, in researching and just trying to see how many games were covered last year, I think I found maybe 6 or 7 games that actually anybody had a write-up on, which is, unfortunate. 95% of these kids, this is going to be it for sports for them as far as playing on an organized team. And I think that, we have student athletes out there who definitely need to get covered. The vast majority, like I said, 95% of them are going to be all done playing their sport, whatever it is, after high school. And so I think trying to find an outlet for them to get covered. The site that we're going to have, it's kind of a little bit about the site we're going to have. I've noticed most of the sites out here are behind a paywall or they need a subscription. That's not going to be the case with our site. It's going to be completely free. In fact, myself and Coach Dash over here are talking. In fact, we are paying for these schools to get covered.
That's right.
We're not asking for any money. We're not asking for subscriptions. We are right now currently shelling out our own teacher salary to try to help these kids at least get recognized for the hard work and the coaches for the hard work they do as well.
No, you nailed it. And we've been talking about this for a while. We're trying to figure out why this area, such a big area, such a wealthy area, Northern Virginia, part of the DMV, all that stuff. Why so little coverage? And it's just so big, right?
Yeah.
It's an enormous area. There's some guys who do some great stuff. There's some local guys, but how much can they do? I mean, you and I were talking about this. What are we going to do? Drive around to 30 different high schools, 40 different high schools? And it's impossible.
From Gainesville down to Potomac, probably.
Right.
For Freedom. I mean, there's just way too much coverage. And, it just, there was a time where your local newspaper had a full, sports section where they had multiple reporters who could do these kind of things. It's just not the day we live in anymore.
The good old days. Good old days. You being a California guy, the Fairfax Journal, the Northern Virginia Journal, those are things. I worked at the Fairfax Journal, the main headquarters back in the day in the 90s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that you're right. I mean, we had a sports guy, and there was an Arlington Journal, there was a Fairfax Journal, there was a Montgomery Journal, and it was great having those local papers. We still have local papers, but again, resources just such a big area.
Well, I think if you go through and look at, so my younger brother who got his degree in journalism, he found that it's a dying industry. I mean, I don't even know where you can get a local newspaper anymore. I don't think I've even seen a newsstand that has a local newspaper. So again, that one, obviously, you and I are both educators, so we're passionate about kids. We're both love sports, we're passionate about sports, and I think trying to find a way again to get an outlet to get just to get some recognition in there for the coaches and players who are out there.
Right. So just to kind of, make it clear as far as what we're doing, we got the podcast component here, and we're going to try and do that weekly, and we'll get the podcast going. And hopefully as the season comes up, we're going to be talking about the preseason, the scrimmages,
right.
Kind of the season favorites, that kind of thing. And then we got the website component, right, where, you're going to talk about writing articles and that kind of thing, if you want to kind of elaborate on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So right now we'd sent out questionnaires out to every coach in region B, C, and D. Every coach that we could, maybe if you're listening to this podcast right now and you're a head coach and you did not get one, please reach out to us. You can DM us at our on our social media to try to get articles written, just a season preview. The season preview of all the schools. I understand that we're getting close to August 1, where I've been coaching long enough, and Coach Daff's been coaching long enough to know that your season's about to ramp up. But just to give us an opportunity to kind of give you guys a small write up. Luckily, we've had about 4 so far. We send them out on Thursday and Friday. We've gotten about 4 so far. So we're gonna try to make sure we get a write up, and then throughout the course of the season, we're gonna try to feature kids on there. We're gonna try to feature student athletes out there. We'll be reaching out to your coaches again, trying to get ideas of student athletes that you may want to have a feature written on. We're going to try to make sure also we're going to be updating things on the stats. We're going to get the stats from Max Preps and try to print them out weekly, so that way the kids can see kind of where they stand. So if you're updating your Max Preps, we're going to print those things out there as well. And thirdly, we are going to try to make our ways out to some games. Again, right now it's just 2 of us. It's 2 of us, and there are almost 40 teams. So we'll make it out when we can. Again, this is we're doing this as a volunteer effort, but we'll try to make out to games where we can, to try to cover games. Again, to try to get some press. I've noticed the only high school stuff I ever see covered is the Channel 7 News at 15 minutes, and they have to cover DC, Virginia, and Maryland, which I think is an impossible task. So we've kind of narrowed it down. Again, the areas really large, but we're going to try to make sure that we get some coverage as well. And not just the football. While football is the thing that we know the most about, we are going to be reaching out to, the volleyball and the field hockey teams as well this year, to see if we get them a write-up, right? Because they also deserve to get coverage as well.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you said that, because that's something that, that all the sports need it. And in terms of our podcast and things that you and I are passionate talking about, it's going to be football, obviously.
Right.
But in terms of, if we can get the information from the coaches and they can help us promote, their sport, we could do that on the website. Right. We can definitely do that. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah. So that's pretty much what we're kind of trying to do. It's a huge endeavor. I mean, we are looking at it now, and we're not done. We have some meetings set up with people who also cover sports locally. There's a really big site that covers. I'm from Long Beach, and they cover Long Beach sports, and then they spend time covering it. And so I have a meeting set up with them to try to learn it. Hopefully you coaches can be patient with us. Obviously this is all a work in progress, but I think that, give us some time, and we'll try to make sure that this is kind of worth your while. And again, we'll promote the work that you're doing with these young student athletes, and as well as the students themselves.
That's it. I mean, promoting the coaches, the athletes, the schools, right? I mean, just kind of giving love to everybody. And that's the one thing that I do want to, stress also, is that, local Scott Abraham, I think his name is, he does great coverage. Chad Ricardo does local coverage.
Yeah.
They do a great job. But, and I get it, it's the nature of the beast. They're going to, a lot of times it's the same schools on these programs, right? It's these winning programs, right? And there's teams that are grinding away, whether it's that it might have, 0 wins, 2 wins, 4 wins, whatever, that, maybe they're not winning their conference and they're not going to the region title game. But, they have some highlights, and they have some things that people should see. So we kind of want to get, share everything.
Right. And again, if you have somebody that you really think should be featured, if you have a student athlete, please reach out to us. We will do the best we can to try to make sure everybody gets covered. Again, both myself and Coach Dash over here have full-time jobs. But we want to try to make sure that we get as many eyes on your student athlete as we can. And again, no paywall. This is not a subscription service. This is all going to be free. They'll be able to post on their Twitter. You'll be able to post it as well on your Twitter and your socials as well.
Yeah, no doubt. Also, okay, so one thing I do want to mention, and we'll kind of reiterate this as we go on to coaches, though, is I know it's not the best, and it's not everyone does it. And heck, you and I were talking about it tonight, Max Preps. It'd be great to have, everyone kind of updating their stats on Max Preps. That's one place you and I are going to look later in the year or throughout the year. And I know it's not the best and it's not perfect, but at least it's something that's universal, right?
Yeah. And if you do, stats weekly and can update your own stats, I'll try to take those as best I can. Max Preps just makes it easier for us because it's a one stop shop that we can go. We can update it. We can put in leaders as well, and will help your student athlete as well, because when they are advertising themselves, when they're trying to get recruited, they can turn to our website and be like, hey, look, this is our local sports publication. As you can see, I have 45 catches, 975 yards, 14 touchdowns. I have 60 tackles, 14 sacks. A couple picks, right? So they can point these things immediately and be able to post those things for themselves as well.
Right. I mean, we you talk about what we were just talking about a second ago, teams that might be struggling a little bit. Well, you might have a team struggling, but they just had a quarterback throw for 300 yards, or running back just ran for 150 yards. It'd be great to know that and give that give those guys credit.
Yeah. The other thing that I think we'll need from your coach as well, and we'll do as best we can, is if you have a highlight that you want to throw up, again, we're going to have a website. You have some highlights. Our plan is to do a few things. Our plan is to have a player of the week.
And talk about that, Coach.
Yeah. So another plan is that if you can send us your stat, if you have a kid, so you have a kid who throws for 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, send us their actual numbers, send us some stats. Myself and Coach Dash will kind of look at hopefully by Monday or Tuesday, the emails that we get, look at the stats, and then we'll kind of determine kind of who will be. Ideally, what we'd like to do is do a player of the week per district. Obviously, if we don't get enough, then it might just be a player of the week. But if you have somebody who has big stats, send it to us, and then we can do a quick feature. We can put their highlights on the website. Have them be the Nova High School Sports is the name of our website. Player of the week. We'll have their stats on there. You want to send us a picture, we can put their picture on there and have that done as well. Again, we're thinking big because we think you guys all deserve it. Everybody deserves it.
Right. No, I agree. I think that's great. All right. So we kind of want to start talking about, kind of set it up, the next topic here. We're going to start talking about last season, right?
Right.
If the whole idea is throughout the course of these recordings is talking about the season, we kind of got to have the summary episode, right? And this is kind of sort of the quick summary episode.
Right.
Talking about last year and that kind of thing.
Right. So of course last year, we'll work in where I have give me a second here. I'm gonna get the brackets up right now. So I think we all know who ended up being the state champ last year was Freedom High School in a really exciting game to end the season. With the big rapid comeback that they had from Highland Springs, which was pretty exciting. We had some exciting games early on in the playoffs. Obviously, we had the huge upset. You had the huge upset with the 1 seed falling to the 8 seed with Yorktown to South Lakes last year.
Huge upset.
Gigantic upset we had last year. A really interesting thing about last year's playoffs, I think myself and Coach Dash were looking at, is that in regions C and D, there were 2 essentially kind of blowout games, and then two relatively close games, 1-score games. I think the Edison Fairfax game was a 1-score game in the fourth quarter, where Fairfax pulls ahead. Region B, oddly enough, though, all 4 opening games were 3-score games, which makes things kind of interesting in that region, where that was the only region where you had 4 games that were just pretty much not competitive, as opposed to the other region where you had at least 2. And I think the thought process always is, right, that your 5-4 matchup should be pretty close. Your 6-3 matchup should be kind of close. Your 1-8, maybe not as much, but that didn't seem to be the case in region B.
Yeah, no, looking at region, like you said, region D, close, kind of a mix, right? You had two
Mhm.
blowouts, you had two close games in Region D. The one that I really thought was interesting, looking back on it now, you already said Yorktown, South Lakes. Yorktown really came on.
Right.
They really came on. I was impressed with Yorktown. We saw them, at Woodson. We saw them first game of the season.
Up close and personal.
Right, first game of the season last year, and that was a close game actually.
Yeah.
But I thought they're well coached. Coach has been there for a long time now. He does a good job. But that is one of those teams, and they were relatively young.
Right.
So I'm looking forward to seeing what that playoff team, what that 7 seed can do coming into this season.
Yeah, I mean they're but again, right? You have an experienced head coach. You have a head coach who's kind of been through all the wars. He's seen a ton, right? I mean, there's probably not a situation he hasn't been in that he does, that's going to be brand new for him. And also, I think, last year we were like styles kind of make fights, right? You have a ground and pound against a high powered offense, and again, styles make fights. Coach Dash is a big boxing fan.
Yes, sir.
He's a fan of the sweet science.
That's
a lot of times you get that really tough matchup, right? You have this seasoned head coach with a certain style of play that sometimes it's just a tough thing to deal with. So I mean, offense.
No, I was just going to say there, it's going to be interesting to see. You look at like a 2 seed like South Lakes. There's going to be a turnaround, right?
Right.
There's going to be some teams, and I'm pulling for South Lakes. There's a lot of talent out there, but they were a veteran team last year. They broke some kind of record with how many seniors they had. I don't even know what the number was, but it was a crazy amount of seniors. So it's going to be some youth over there. So it's going to be tough. So Yorktown coming back, kind of battle tested at the end. It'll be interesting to see, coming out of that region. Washington Liberty had a great season, but that's one of those matchups, right? WNL. My wife, by the way, is a WNL, but so she was rooting for them. They had a great season, another Cinderella season right there for them as a 3 seed. But Westfield came in, the old veteran team. Westfield, kind of did their thing. They graduated guys too, but Westfield also reloads a lot, right?
Right.
And I don't want to get too specific because, one thing, the format we're going to be talking about the CONCORDE District.
Right. That'll our next episode. We'll be breaking down kind of what we think about each one, and CONCORDE will be next week. But go ahead. No, I was gonna say another interesting thing about that bracket though is that Madison rolls to that bracket. If you look at them, they don't play a close game on until they get into the state semifinal, which. But again, Madison obviously, one of the preeminent programs currently in the state.
Yeah, you're right. I do wonder. It is what it is. Like you said, style makes fights, and you wonder what would have happened. Yorktown was kind of on a roll there. With what they do. That might have been interesting to see at Yorktown Madison. We didn't get to see it though. Sliding over. So, so Madison, like you said, rolled through that. Okay, let's kind of move down to Region B.
Region B. So kind of like where I talked about before, the fact that those games early on, there's the closest game is 21 points, which is wild for a first round of playoffs. Obviously, Region B is going to be extremely different this year. I mean,
that's the story, right? That's the big story.
That's a big story, and I'm for sure we'll be talking about that. Because the big story is that you have Jared Van Acker going into there. But that's what we're talking about. That's the big story about Region B.
That's the big story. Yeah, it's not freedom. It's Van Acker going to. God bless Van Acker.
Yeah,
good friend of ours, by the way. Good friend of ours.
Yeah, VA is a good guy. My lunch buddy for 4 years, hanging out with him.
And we will get to that conference, and we will talk about next week, actually, all the new coaches. So we'll talk about VA and all the other new coaches in the area. But you're right, that is a big deal. I mean, obviously the freedom thing is number one.
Right.
Over there. Look, they could do it. They could be the 1 seed again. No one's saying they can't. Odds are, if I was a betting man, they're not it'll be 7 in round 1.
Right. It'll be a little tough. It'll be a little tougher in that one. But, the one thing is, right, is that region in particular, a lot of athletes come out of there, right? A lot of athletes, a lot of D1 kids out of there. I know Gainesville currently has a Power 5 running back, if I'm not mistaken.
A lot of great athletes over there in the Gainesville area.
Yeah.
Battlefield, that's a tough team, always a tough team.
Yeah. Battlefield. And obviously, you have Mountain View coming in from over there. But again, like I said, the most interesting thing though is that the first round there nobody was competitive. Again, close game is 21, and I think 21 points in the playoffs.
Right, and Freedom kind of cleaned up over there, right?
Right. So you're gonna see a change over there is my guess.
Sliding over to
Region C. We are rather familiar with it. With both of us being
we are very familiar with Region C.
Region C. I think the big story out of there is Fairfax, right?
Oh,
I think everybody thought Fairfax was going to take a step back. Obviously Tony Rojas, who looks like he's going to be a starter this year at Penn State. How do you replace that? And what might be one of the biggest stories of the playoffs was the fact that you had a Fairfax team who got blown out against South County just a few weeks earlier, turns around and flips the script. That I can't think of a time I've seen that happen, especially playoff time.
Right.
With obviously a veteran coaching staff at South County, to have that flip was just, I remember, was really eye raising to me. I mean, if you want to talk about one thing in that one, that and the close game that they played against the 8 seed against West Potomac.
No, I agree. Fairfax, what an awesome job by Coach Taylor.
Yeah,
I mean, amazing. We saw them. Obviously we saw them every year, and we saw them. Rojas' senior year, and they were a force, obviously. And I, coached against a lot of those kids, even in youth league. So I knew that team pretty well with Tony and Lyerly and Balderson. They had some great players 2 years ago. They graduated a lot of players, and what they did last year was pretty impressive.
Right, absolutely.
Right.
Hats off to them. I mean, to make that run again when a lot of people counted them out,
yeah.
especially when they lose Chris Jones week 6, week 7. I think a lot of people counted them out, and for them making the playoff run is rather impressive.
The other one though that I do want to talk about there is again the way the season ended. I know they lost, but West Potomac, they were an 8 seed, another team we saw fairly young, really dynamic.
Absolutely.
Really dynamic, some weapons on that team. They played South County close, and actually they had a chance to win that game late. So
now, if I'm not mistaken, they were like on the 3-yard line. If memory serves me correct, I didn't get a chance to go back and rewatch it, but if I remember correctly,
they had a chance to win that game.
Yeah.
So that was one, and then the other one, obviously, again, West Springfield.
Right.
That tough team. Beat Hayfield, came out. Played Lake Braddock close. And relatively close, 2-score game. So, man, there's so many teams there. That's like the opposite of all the other conferences, all the other games, by the way. A lot of close games, a lot of tight, decent matchups.
Right. Well, I mean, West Springfield, obviously, in that region, it seems that things are turned around. Fairfax and West Springfield were not, if you look statistically, if you go, there's a site called Massey Ratings that will show you like scores over the last, I don't know, it's like 25 years. And West Springfield and Fairfax, and obviously when we get to talking about the page rate, I'm sure we'll get into it more. But they've really kind of turned things around over there. West Springfield, they come back. They return both. They're going to end up returning both the offensive and defensive player of the year. But to not kind of bury the lead, last year Braddock was obviously really good. I mean, they were a solid football team. All the way across the board. Not any holes I can really think of.
And the scariest part, and we'll get to this when we get to the breakdown, obviously, of that conference, but the scariest part for everybody else, that Braddock team that, ended up winning the region, they were young.
Yeah.
They were young last year. Young quarterback, young running back, a lot of juniors and sophomores on that team.
Yeah. Well, Braddock was so good, they took me out. So, I mean.
That's right. That's right. For those who don't know, that was the game where Coach Mesa broke his leg.
I broke my leg, tore my ACL, my MCL, and my meniscus. So thank you, Lake Braddock. You gave me a Christmas vacation off.
Well, by the way, we're talking, and you got a lot of coaches in the audience, obviously.
Yeah.
That's something that's happening more and more of. So people got to be careful on the sidelines. Last year, I mean, it happened in the NFL.
Yeah.
You're just seeing more and more of that happening now with coaches getting, hit by players on the side, accidentally getting leg swiped or whatever.
Definitely is a contact sport now, apparently, coaching.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, some really good football during the playoffs, obviously. Playoff football is something that's special. We saw really good matchups. And, the question is coming in next year, who's going to be that team that's going to kind of surprise people, right?
Right.
Who's going to be that team that kind of just jumps up out of nowhere and takes people by surprise. You think you might have some ideas, or you have a team that you think might let us know, and we'd love to talk to you guys and kind of see where you're at. We promise we will not divulge any secrets.
No. Yeah. And power rankings, right? That's something that we want to do, and
right,
give our own little power rankings, right? One thing that we talk a lot about is is the sort of the PowerPoints and how that stuff works and the brackets. And obviously, there's a lot of flaws in that. You could find flaws in a lot of things, obviously. But there are some flaws in that. And, it'll give us a chance here, since we're kind of out of the game now. We can kind of create our own power rankings and kind of say, okay, well, I know this team, technically, has more PowerPoints than these guys, but, these guys, didn't play, whoever. They actually had to play this team, and this team. So maybe they should be a higher ranked team, at least in our power rankings.
I agree. Yeah, absolutely.
Now, we did talk about next week. Next week's episode, we're going to talk about, we're going to start breaking down conferences.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the first conference we're going to talk about next week is the mighty CONCORDE.
CONCORDE, which oddly enough, our questionnaire, we've already got 3 teams from the CONCORDE, so we've already been looking at kind of players that you have coming in. We played 2 of those teams last year, so actually we've seen them both up close and personal, and seeing kind of what they have coming back, which will be exciting. Obviously right now the big dog running that conference is Madison. They're doing fantastic things over there, but it's going to be exciting to talk about them and break them down, as best we can. But yeah, and the way we're going to talk about it is where we're going to end up releasing all the season previews as well. So the first one we're going to release when our website should drop out the first week of August is going to be the CONCORDE District. And so we'll have all the write-ups ready to go on. So hopefully you guys can get that back to us as well.
Yeah. And Westfield wants that title back. Centerville wants, to be top dog again. Such a competitive district. You got South Lakes, who was, the upstarts last year. So it's going to be a dog fight, in that, like it always is.
Yeah.
And then Oakton with a new coach.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about that next week.
I think between the Patriot and and CONCORDE, I think he's the only new coach. Am I right on that?
You said Patriot and CONCORDE between those two?
Yeah, between
off the top of my head, I'm going to say yes.
Yeah, so I think he's the only new coach, which says something, about those 2 districts as far as where they're at turnover wise. So
yeah, I mean, they're tough districts. I mean, I look forward to talking about the CONCORDE. I think someone said earlier, one of the coaches referred to him as the SEC of Nova conferences.
Well, I think the big thing with them is you have Westfield, who got 5 state championships in their first 17 years of existence. Which is that every 3 years they're I mean, I know they had 3 in a row, but I mean 5 state champions in 15 years. I mean, you have schools out there that have been around for 70 years who have 0 state championships in football. To be able to pull that off, I mean, it's definitely going to be a challenge.
People always ask, and again, you being from California and you come over here, you're like, man, why is that conference? And they're relatively in the same area, most of the schools. The youth programs, I mean, I'll tell you what, the youth programs, Centerville youth program was always really good. Obviously, Vienna youth program. You've been in this area, 5 years now? 6 years?
This will be my 4th year. 2020 is my moved here, so this is.
Feels like 10. Sorry.
I didn't have much gray in my beard when I moved here. I think the shoveling snow is killing me.
But yeah, I bet. But I mean, you even heard of Vienna Youth and how solid that youth program is. Like I said, Centerville, Chantilly. I mean, growing up, Chantilly youth was formidable and tough. I don't know how it is now as much. You go Reston and Herndon. Both have youth feeders. It's just it's solid, good. Good programs, good coaching, and it works its way up.
Right, and I think anytime you have a good feeder where you have kids who have played football before, because I tell people all the time, it takes a year to adjust to the physicality of football. I mean, it doesn't matter when you start. It doesn't matter how physical you are. Just to get kind of used to that, it takes about a year. And when you have kids who played for a while, when they walk in and you're not trying to get them over that hump, I think is a big advantage to have those athletes coming in. And I'm not saying that those coaches out there aren't doing a great job, because obviously they are, right? I mean, there are coaches who walk into places and don't do nearly as well.
They really are. And one thing, speaking of Vienna, and we'll get into this, I'm already chomping at the bit to talk about the CONCORDE, because I'll tell you what I think. I'm telling you, I think a lot of those athletes, a lot of those Vienna youth athletes, they go to Madison, right? But guess what? A lot of them go to Oakton.
Yeah.
And Oakton, they've had something. We saw them last year. We saw the freshman team last year. That's what I'm looking forward to talking to about next week.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. I'm excited. So those of you guys who are Concord fans or Concord coaches, make sure you guys tune in. Or those of you guys who are other coaches from other places and want to hear what we have to say, you know, definitely join in the conversation. If you want to tweet at us, let us know what you guys think. Yeah, no, it's going to be exciting.
Yeah,
it's gonna be an exciting adventure. I hope everybody out there is excited to go on a kind of journey with us. Like I said, it's our first time doing all this stuff, and we're just trying to bring some coverage for all you guys out there.
Well said. Well said. Yeah. Look, give us a follow, a like. I think by the time this gets out to air, it'll be YouTube, it'll be Twitter, it'll be, all that stuff. So get on the website, read the articles, comment if you can, send us some emails, some feedback, that's what we're looking for. But just support and just let it out there and share with your friends and family and players and all that kind of stuff.
And anyone who'd like to come on with us, if you got some stuff to share, let us know. Let us know what you got to say. Let us know kind of where you're at. We'd be more than happy to have people on here who want to, talk and let me also be clear on this. Be supportive. We're not here to bash anybody. We're not here to, these are people working with children. They're teens with children and kids, right? And so, let's get on here if you want some positive things. If you have some experience, even if you have a lot of experience in the area and you kind of want to talk about historical or when you want to talk about what things, let us know. Jump on here. We're happy to bring you on and bring in whatever expertise that you may have.
No doubt. And one thing about you and I, we're pretty honest, and we know what we know, we know what we don't know. And if we misspeak or we say something which is totally possible, it wasn't on purpose, right?
Absolutely.
And we're willing to go back and correct that later. So I mean, we're not the experts on everything, but we are a couple guys that just want to talk area football, and we saw there is a void to fill, and we're trying to fill it.
Yeah. So again, come along on ride with us, and hopefully we can give you something to talk about. Hopefully we can kind of again fill the void and kind of bring the spotlight back on these students, on these staff.
Well, thanks for joining us on the All Hitches podcast. Our favorite play
in the world.
All Hitches, baby. Thanks again. Right. Northern Virginia Football Podcast. I'm Coach Dash.
I am Coach Mesa.
All right, we'll see you next time.